Salty.
All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. As you are willing and able, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming. We start, as we always do, with the scheduled audience to public for the public comment period. We have had no one sign up tonight to deliver public comment, so we'll move right into... Oh.
Sorry, I was looking for the sign up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, what I'll ask you to do then is please go to the microphone, give us your name and the town you live in, and then deliver your comments. And I apologize for having said you weren't here.
My name is Christy Woods. I live in South Berwick. I have a son in 3rd grade and a daughter in 5th, both in the Marchwood system. And I'm going to just read from this paper because I'm not a speech maker. So first, thank you to the school board for the work you do on behalf of Marchwood families. I'm truly grateful to you. Now I'm here, there's a lot of debate over whether smartphones and social media are bad for kids, and if so, how bad? And it's certainly true that these technologies can do amazing things when used with care. But the alarming trends we're seeing in teens' mental health began not with COVID and not with our unprecedented political turmoil. They began when smartphones took over. There are conflicting studies, of course, but most data supports a connection between this technology and juvenile depression, anxiety, reduced sleep, fentanyl deaths, and more. I have a handout here for anyone who would like to see my sources of information. As of today, more than half of U.S. children have smartphones by age 11. Approximately 1 in 5 8-year-olds has one. American teens are spending almost 7.5 hours per day on average on screen media, not counting schoolwork or homework. Common sense would dictate we at least try to change direction. Many parents are feeling hopeless. It seems inevitable that our funny, creative, talkative little humans will soon have their noses buried in a phone, and that they'll be surrounded by friends who are not looking at them, but at their screens. But I'm hopeful there's an alternative, that we can change our community's norms and expectations. The U.S. Surgeon General recently urged parents to come together and agree to delay social media. On CNN, he said, and I quote, "If parents can band together and say, as a group, we're not going to allow our kids to use social media until 16 or 17 or 18 or whatever age they choose, that's a much more effective strategy," end quote. How do we delay social media? We delay smartphones. Not all cell phones, but smartphones. There are phones that look like smartphones but only text, call, play music, and have GPS tracking. There are watches that do the same. They offer this peace of mind, but without handing your kid unsupervised internet access, and without handing the internet unsupervised access to your kid. There's a nonprofit organization called Wait Until 8th to provide support in the decision to delay. This organization has been endorsed by schools across the country and featured on the Today Show, NPR, and other outlets. Wait Until 8th has created a pledge where parents can find community in making the decision to wait, and I'm asking MSAD 35 to encourage schools to send home their flyer and an email. It's been argued that it's not the district's place to get involved with this issue. However, schools have long provided guidance on healthy choices. Read to your kids, offer 5 fruits and veggies a day, limit screen time to 2 hours. Encouraging parents to delay smartphones is a mere extension of that, one that simply didn't seem necessary 10 years ago, but is necessary now. Also, our kids' education is being directly impacted by the distraction of smartphones, by stunted linguistic development, and the mental health crisis playing out in classrooms and in hallways. Considering the board's mission of supporting the development of the student's whole self and ensuring students are challenged by learning opportunities that meet or exceed standards, it is most definitely the district's place to take action. Because smartphones have been expertly designed to be powerfully addictive, There will likely be government guidelines eventually, but that will be too late for hundreds of Marshwood students. I'm begging you to have the courage to do something now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I know that we don't usually comment on folks that, you know, comment. But I just want to say just thank you so much for spreading your word. I personally, I'm a parent, and I waited to 8. This is the first day I've heard about the wait through 8, and my kids are older. But I waited, and I just encourage you just to kind of spread the word with your parent friends and the other organizations that you volunteer with, because you're spreading the word to fellow parents. But yeah, thanks for coming, because I learned something.
May I make a comment?
Thank you.
Please, go ahead.
Ms. Wood, just so you know, I will get back to you this week. I had a chance to talk to my administrative team, and actually part of what we're going to have on the agenda tonight will address some of your concerns. So,
Thank
you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. Now this time we will actually move to the report of the secretary. May I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of our last meeting?
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of Wednesday, March 15th, 2023.
I second, Rebecca.
Rebecca, thank you. Comments or questions? I went through them this morning. They look pretty good.
Yeah, I do too.
I didn't see anything. Anybody come up with anything?
No, I didn't.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, then all in favor? That is 5-0. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the report of the chair. I have merely to say that we have another town officials meeting scheduled for April 12th. That's next Wednesday, if I did the sums correctly. That will be at the Elliott Town Hall at 8:30, and it will also be, there'll be a Zoom link as well, if that's easier. So as we've done in the past, I will do my best to remember to attempt to coordinate who is going to attend. Good, awesome.
Great, thank you.
Surely. That brings us to the report of the superintendent.
Thank you very much. I wanted to start tonight and talk a little bit about a recent development with the change in subsidy. So people have seen in the news that there was a miscalculation by the Maine Department of Education that impacted the mill rate. Come on. Huh? This is when we should have had the flip charts. kind of turn it. So. Did you do that, or did I just do that? All right, so we unstuck it. Perfect, sorry. So the Maine Department of Education notified us about a week ago that there was an error in the ED 279s, and the ED 279s kind of determines what Maine's communities get for funding from the state of Maine for education. This was a calculation where the mill rate was calculated too high, and what that really means is that with lowering the mill rate, the state takes on more of a responsibility to educate the youth in the state of Maine. That miscalculation resulted in about a $590,000 increase in our state subsidy from when we originally presented the budget. So that's a good thing. So what do you do with that? And so trying to find a balanced approach to be able to give our community some relief from the presentation that we did earlier, but at the same time, there's a list of needs that we have as a district and some really important things that we need to talk about. And so the first thing I just want to talk about was a grant opportunity, and this all will tie together, I promise. But we were made aware of a district grant through the School Safety and Violence Prevention Grant, which is through the COPS program. And the COPS program is the same grant that we went through to have the SRO at Marshwood Middle School. And this is a matching grant, and basically you can apply to up to $500,000 if we match, or we have excuse me, I'm saying this wrong. It's a $625,000 grant. But we need to come up with $125,000 to kind of show our interest in the grant, and they'll give us $500,000 on the other side, which obviously that's good math. As part of this, we've been doing some real collaborative work with our local law enforcement and first responders. Really important because we've been walking through the schools, taking the time to be able to really look at our crisis planning. And one of the areas that has come up at those meetings is the entrance of Marshwood High School. And so as you came in this evening, you would walk through the doors, and so you would come in through the first door, you would come in, and there's a second set of doors that you would walk in. If you were to come in during the school day, you would get buzzed in. The secretary would say, come on in once they pass kind of our criteria. You would come in, and once you entered the building, that second door is unlocked, and then you would be able to walk in, and the expectation would be is that you would go directly to the main office. But really, you would have unfettered access to the building at that point in time. There is no way to be able to manage that traffic. And so strong feedback would be that we've got to change that. We've got to create a vestibule where people would come in and be able to monitor who's coming in and out of the building and ensure that they're going to the office, going through the proper check-in protocols. To do that, it's about $125,000. There's some issues with our current vestibule where there's been some rotting on some doors. And then the addition of adding onto the vestibule, so people would then come in, they would be buzzed in outside, they would come in, they would have to go down along the vestibule, check in the office, and then the office would then give them access to the building if they need it through a buzzer system. So there would be a double check scenario now in place. And so this is something that we feel is really important to do anyway, in addition to the fact that that vestibule now is almost 25 years old, and so there's a great deal of rot and unsettling, so we need to fix some things. So it's a project that we needed to do. It really meets the criteria of the grant foundation, and so if we spend that $130,000 approximately to upgrade that vestibule, that would meet the criteria for the grant and allow us to apply to receive the $500,000 in grant funding. So obviously that's really good math for us to be able to do something we would do anyway. This was on our capital improvement plan, and so a question that you might have is, John, we have the boiler project on the capital improvement plan for next year. Why would you kind of skip a year and pull this from, I think it was 2 years out, improvement plan? The reality is this, is that even if we had the money and we wanted to write a check right now to be able to put the boiler in, they wouldn't be able to do it for 2 years. And so that's part of the issue. So we're buying it this year. They're going to install it next year. It would be the following year's budget. So just so you understand that that's why there's a little bit of timing with the boiler issue. And so this really becomes the next logical project, amplified by the ability to access a grant. The other issue that I've really been struggling with is the MIDAS information that we found about Marshwood High School, and basically to paraphrase, something to the effect of, 1 in 4 of our students are actively vaping. The drug and alcohol use is elevated. There's some really concerning trends. How do we take on that issue? And so this extra money would allow us to have a wraparound approach on how to approach that. And so at our presentation at the beginning of March, I talked to you about adding a health teacher. And that health position would then be a a half credit class that would be required by all students that they would take. And it would be focused on drug and alcohol prevention and use, education, really a systematic program for all students to be a part of. So that was already in our budget. But we also have to understand that there are kids that are already at the high school level and unfortunately at the middle school level who are struggling with addiction, dependency on drugs and alcohol. And so how do we manage that? So to create an opportunity by hiring a substance abuse counselor or a counselor who has experience in substance abuse counseling would be kind of the wraparound approach. And how would we do that? Is that if you remember, I put in a 0.7 position for a transitions coach. And so what I would do is I would combine the transition coach with this counseling position by adding about $35,000 to the budget to create this position that a person would do both. And so they would help us with the transitions, but also be a resource for students at the middle school and the high school. I want to be clear, this isn't a counseling service. That's not what we're doing. We're trying to create a person who might have to do some short-term counseling, but also can activate community resources and work with families to be able to best support their children. In addition, deterrence. We're talking about creating vape detectors within the buildings, where that's a constant issue that we battle at the high school and the middle school around use of vapes that is very common across the state of Maine. And so there would be a vape detection system that would actually detect the use of vapes through an environmental sensor. There are no cameras in the restrooms. I want to be very, very clear about that. But there would be a sensor that would go off that would trigger the camera outside so that we could monitor the use of vapes on the school property. And then the last thing is we've been really working on our attendance. And so we put some money aside in this year's budget for attendance coordination. We would pull that money and put it into one position where it would be an attendance coordinator. So early in the morning, That person may be the person responding to students who get there at 7:30 in that new window that we're talking about in the vestibule, and then the rest of the day they would be spending monitoring the hallways. One of the issues is this is a really big building. We're really working really hard on remediation for our students, and so there isn't staff that we have available to be in the hallways at all times, and so this would be a person that would be in the hallway in addition to our school SRO, similar to how we do lunch duty. And so I really feel like this is the wraparound approach that we would need to be able to take to really put a dent in this. We have to educate kids, we have to support them who need support, we've got to be very clear that this is unacceptable, and we have to monitor it. And so that would be the way that we would do that. In addition, I want to kind of go back and refocus on our strategic plan, because that's kind of the lens that we use when we find out what's most important. And so what are the district core values? We talked about this before: safety, positive relationships, character, student voice, equity and support, and excellence in learning. And again, this is the community and staff working together to support students. There are resources involved with this. There's human resources, there's fiscal resources, and there's time resources. And so all of those things impact what we're able to offer our students and our families. So let's talk about safety right now. One of the issues that we have at Marshwood Middle School is access to drinking water in the event of power outages. And so our drinking water system at the middle school is pretty fragile. If power were to go out, we have water that's stored in barrels. We wouldn't be able to offer drinking water to students during the day in the event of a power outage. So what we want to do is remove those barrels, be able to have a generator that would run heat and limited lighting, and also be able to run the water. So we'd have access to water. So in the event that we had a power outage, you wouldn't have to send kids home from school, for example, would be something that we would have to talk about. The other thing is that we have really antiquated phone systems at our elementary schools. So we would look at the classroom phones and the office phones. We have a system in place, but the phones are so antiquated that it can't properly access the system that we have. And so this would be along the lines of our school safety, because it's really important in the event of a crisis to be able to have access to the phones, to be able to communicate and have clear communication. When we talk about ALICE, that communication is critical when we talk about school safety. Excellence in learning. I know it seems small, but I want to remind you, I think we talked about a 64% increase in the cost of paper alone. I think it went from $26 for a packet of paper to $42 for a packet of paper. And so that's just kind of the prices that we're seeing. And so this $5 increase per student is a cost of about $10,000. And so what does the $5 mean, John? So remember, as when we start with kids, what we do is at every school we have a number of students. We multiply that by a dollar amount. So basically what we're doing, for example, at Marshwood High School is if you have, let's just say for easy math, 700 students, if we add $5 per student to the general supply account, that creates $3,500 more money for the high school for school supplies. For example, at the high school, that money would go to paying for SATs for students to be able to take SATs on a Saturday, as we talked about during the budget meeting. SATs, remember, is a little bit different now because there's no longer the state-required testing, and so there's a little bit of a gap there. So we want to make sure we fill in that gap for those students who still want to access that opportunity. The other issue is our summer programming. During the pandemic, we created a pretty exorbitant and really well thought through summer programming for our students, and that focused not only on academic but also social emotional health and wellness of our students. And so that grant funding is going away, and so we were able to access $25,000 to go towards that programming, because I think we really are on the right track of getting those kids some help over the summertime, particularly in the area of math. We're going to grow in as well. So. And then the exciting one is that we, Elliott Elementary School has been talking about this. The Peeps have been in contact with Dr. Harrison, but I would propose that we would take $65,000 and put it towards renovating our playground at at Elliott Elementary School. Student voice. One of the issues that has kind of come up, and I think it's awesome that it comes from kids, is really the recycling. And so one of the things that lost momentum over the course of the pandemic was recycling. And so we also are kind of struggling a little bit with the fact that plastics aren't kind of what they used to be. 10 years ago, that was a very, very active recycling market. It is not any longer, and it really fluctuates. And so we did some research. We spoke to the board a little bit through our facilities and finance committee, but there's a $10,000 program where we can do zero sort recycling. So basically there would be a recycling bin and there would be a waste bin, and that would be it. And so we could be able to work with students to be able to really make sure that we're creating sustainable energy and also be mindful of what we're using. So, and then a water filtration system at Marshwood Middle School. There's a lot going on with the water there, and I think the reason there's a lot going on is really where it's located, first of all, that we're right along Sturgeon Creek. And so the water is totally safe there to drink. I think sometimes kids get the idea that it's not safe. The water is totally safe, but it really is an unpleasant taste for a lot of people. And so we need to look at a filtration system to be able to create a drinking water that has a little bit, another level of filtration. The hard part with that is typically people would be like, oh, a water softener would be a great idea. The problem is a water softener adds saline, and the salt content level in that water is already high. We can't do that, so that's not an option for us. So we're going to try to come up with some creative approaches to doing this. I just want to be clear that this may become cost prohibitive at some point, and so this is kind of what we think it's going to cost right now. This is our best guess, talking to some vendors, but I also don't know, that's a very complex system because we have the PFAS system already running there, we have the chlorination system already running in there, and so they have the tank system that's in there, so we just want to be really mindful of what we're doing as we kind of go forward. Equity. We had a situation where we had a young person move into the community, required wheelchair access or bus access in a wheelchair, and so we do not have enough vans right now to be able to accommodate that, so we had to rent a van. The cost of renting that van is $24,000 a year to rent that van, so that just, again, that's not great math for us. So if we buy our own van, we're going to save about $4,000 a year, and so then we also we have the van. And then I mentioned this to you before, just very concerning the rate of increase for our out-of-district placements. Feel that it would be fiscally wise to be able to take $50,000 and put that into the budget to be able to accommodate if a student moves in, that's money we have to spend up front. We do get reimbursed. Kate asked the question earlier, do we get reimbursed for that? We do, but it's basically 2 years down the line. So we've got to come up with the money now, and then we get reimbursed for it later. So you do have to have that cash flow to be able to do it. And remember, one of the tricky parts with the school budget is that we lock in the maximum amount that we have to spend. And so if you get a couple of out-of-district placements that come in, that's going to impact. So we're pulling money from other places to be able to do that. We just can't say, because of this, we're going to, if it's a $32 million budget, now it's going to be a $32,200,000 budget. We have to stay at the $13 million budget. So this is really important to be able to build this in there in the event that there's an issue. Fiscal, not exciting, but it's a reality that we put $50,000 away for an increase for our property and casualty insurance. We were told that it would be about a 27% increase in that, 25 to 27%. That's about $57,000 that it would cost if it was 27%, so we wanted to put an extra, basically $7,000, just to make sure we have that covered in the event that there was an issue. Good news, though, is today we found out that our health insurance came in at zero. And so we went through the numbers, and we really speculated, and we wanted to be, fiscally conscious and conservative to say, look, let's put, kind of a space saver of 2% in the budget, which is about $90,000, and we found out that that's zero. And so we've also accounted for that. And so what we're saying is that $90,000 is going to go directly to lower the taxpayer's burden, is the recognition that I'm making right off the bat. So what does it all mean? The additional state subsidy was about $596,571. This is a subtraction. So safety grant initiative that we talked about, the main entrance, that's $130,000. Kind of that 4-tier response, adding the extra 3 tiers that we talked about with the vape detection, the additional drug and alcohol counseling opportunities, and the monitor is about $77,000. The additional safety things we talked about with the generator is $73,000. The excellence in learning is $100,000. Obviously, the large portion of that is the playground at Elliott Elementary School. Student voice initiatives, which involves our the drinking water at Marshall Middle School, and the zero source recycling at across the district. Pardon me, it's everywhere. The financial piece of making sure we have enough money to cover the increased costs for our property and casualty insurance, and then the $90,000 that we saved with the zero in our recent health insurance coverage. So we're taking $187,000 and reducing the amount that we're asking our local communities for. So what does that mean? It means that the overall tax assessment originally, when I did my original budget, was 3.97% that we asked from the local communities. And we've lowered that to 3%. This impacted the two communities very differently. So remember, we had this conversation back in November that the mill rate impacts communities differently. And so where we were A month ago with the mill rate, when it was higher, basically the two communities were relatively the same. Now with the mill rate going down, that creates a little bit more of a benefit for Elliott than it does for Southborough. Everyone's still going down, but it's not equal. We don't divide that number in half. And Ryan will talk a little bit about that more with you right now. Any questions about this as we went through? I cut that down by 10 minutes. That's not
Yeah.
bad.
Sure, well
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to briefly talk through this 3-page packet that was up front and that I handed out to all of you. The first page is just kind of a quick summary of all of the items that we just talked about, and basically letting you know that we're adding $409,000 to the budget from that $596,000. On the second page, we are talking about the mill rate and how on our original subsidy printout, that was $7.29 per thousand, and that dropped to $6.97 per thousand, which was a drop of 32 cents. So I basically showed you the calculation of how the state comes up with that required contribution based on the 125 subsidy printout and the 328, multiplying by the state valuation. That's a 3-year average of the state valuation. So the state uses a 3-year average instead of just the actual year. They do that to smooth out if the towns are doing revals and things like that. So you're not, if there's a drop or a large increase, you're not seeing that all in one year. You're kind of smoothing that out over 3 years. From that, you can see that the required contribution for Elliott dropped $341,000 based on that change in mill rate, and that the required contribution for South Berwick dropped $254,000. Basically, those two amounts added together is what the state is additionally putting in, which is the $596,000. So the total amount that the state allocated for education did not change. It was just the what they were requiring from the towns and what the state was putting in. What did change based on the items that we just talked about, that $409,000, was the additional local contribution. In 2007, the two towns had a referendum that elected to change the split of that additional local contribution. Prior to that, that was totally based on the municipal valuations, had nothing to do with enrollment. In 2007, the towns both had a referendum vote. It was very, very close, but basically agreed at that point that instead of splitting, or instead of doing it totally based on valuation, that the towns would split 50% based on valuation and 50% based on student population at Marshwood. So doing those calculations out, you can see that the additional local contribution in Elliott increased $205,000, which was offset by their $341,000 decrease in required contribution, for an overall reduction in state's and tax assessment of $136,000. Kind of run through that same formula for South Berwick, and you can see that their additional local contribution increased $204,000, while their required contribution dropped $254,000 for a net of $50,000. So that's kind of how that split works. You can see when we, the reason I think the communities agreed to do that is when we take the valuation in Elliott, which is higher than South Berwick, but the student population is higher in South Berwick than it is in Elliott. When you kind of mix the two and you go 50-50, you can see that the change in the additional local contribution is very close. So that's kind of, I think, why the communities agreed. It would kind of split that more equally.
Yeah.
Before all of that would have gotten passed on to Elliott with the higher valuation, and it wouldn't have really impacted South Berwick. Any questions on that?
So we will take all of this information and we will update the website so that the public will have access to this. They can see these forms, they can see the presentation in case there's any questions about this.
It's worth repeating, I think, that where we thought a week ago we were at a 3.9% increase, we're now at a 3.0% increase on
Right,
average.
so the third page is what we call the revenue assessment, and that kind of shows you the split percentages for each community. So being an overall local assessment increase for Elliott of 2.76% and an overall increase for South Berwick at 3.31, which when you average together comes down to a 3%. And as Mr. Long just said, that was at 3.97% prior to last week. So. Any other
Any
questions?
questions about the
Thank
budget?
you again for your
Yes,
quick work
awesome.
on this.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Next on the agenda is the Marshall Great Works School presentation on the REV grants, so Rethinking Responsive Educational Ventures. And so, Mr. Brunel, you are up.
They said I couldn't talk long. So, many of the board members have heard this, but a number of years ago, I was probably 4 or 5, it was before the pandemic, we did a activity at school, and it was like, what would be our dream school? If we could make some changes, what would it be? And we had 47 different things out there, and so we just, and one of them was less state testing, but that didn't happen. But what we kind of got down to is just more opportunities for outdoor education. And so that's what we started to do even before the pandemic. Last spring, Wendy and Sarah came to me and said, Jerry, if you spend 4 Wednesdays after school and until like 6 o'clock and we take this course, we're gonna get $100,000. And I'm like, yeah, okay, right. Well, that's what we did. And so Sarah and Wendy, I mean, there's a lot of people involved in what we do. I mean, Ed Hubbard, Todd, I mean, there are just so many people, the staff and everything else that, as we go through this outdoor ed. But, I mean, these 2 folks are the engines of our outdoor ed. And so we have a special on Thursdays that they teach, and so they're here to talk about a little bit about how far we've come. All right, is that pretty clear?
That was pretty good. Thanks for having us. We're really excited to talk to you guys about Great Works Ventures Outdoors, which is our REV, our innovation pilot. REV stands for Rethinking Responsive Education Ventures, and the DOE has been offering these the last few years, and we were lucky enough we spent all last summer writing our pilot and then received $100,000 in September. And the goals of our pilot have been to fund and expand outdoor education for all of our students at Great Works. We are really striving to increase our students' sense of belonging and connection to school, to really work with our vulnerable populations to increase school engagement, and to really develop a understanding of eco-literacy with all of our students. And it takes all of our staff to help make that happen. You can see this is where REV pilots are happening in the state. A few weeks ago, we found out that if we did a little bit more teacher professional development and a couple more, we're going up to Orono on Friday and next week as well, but we'll get $40,000 more, which is exciting. We have until, not this June, but the next June to spend that. So we're really trying to build our structures and really give our teachers the support. You'll see through our presentation to make this last and something that kids will be able to benefit for years and years to come. You can go to the website and check out our whole pilot. We started first with developing an outdoor learning committee and just getting teachers from all the grade levels, specialists, ed techs involved, and really prioritizing what they wanted to see happen so that more and more kids would be able to have these experiences. And the teachers have been really excited about it and really invested, so it's been great to have everyone involved. Woodland and Wonder, I had come here with Grace Jacobs last year, or to present and talk to you. Wendy took over as my colleague running that, and so every Thursday we get to work with all of students throughout Great Works, creating that equity so all kids get to have this experience. We're still doing the team building and the social skills to help our students work on collaboration. We're really helping them notice our strengths in our biodiversity and how we can form connections on our diversity within our communities and making us stronger. Really crossing over into art and science so that students are getting to not just go outside and work to improve their relationships with each other, but really tap into their strengths and exposing them to different content areas. This year our weather's been pretty rough, but the kids have had the benefit of really understanding the impacts of the weather on our local ecosystem. And just where our location is great, we get them out in our community. Here we are at the top of Powder House Hill, but working on observations and just kind of knowing and getting a sense of place, which has been really, really important.
We've done a lot with STEM activities, with building shelters and structures. Again, that collaboration and teamwork is one of our focal points, but also just getting them to understand some basic engineering, doing some debris shelters, which do the same thing. And they're just working so hard, and you can just see them light up with trying new ideas and problem solving and critical thinking, taking healthy risks that really give them the self-confidence that they need to kind of be successful when they come in to face harder challenges in their life down the road. And just a lot of observation and getting in touch with nature, which is really important. Here's a testimonial for one of our students, why we want you to hear why it's so important just from them.
Sorry. The reason I love Woodland Wonder is because I never really get to go out and do these fun things because I'm always too scared to, just explore.
How does help doing with your class help?
It's really fun. I get to be with my friends.
Do you feel less afraid? Because
Yeah, definitely.
what did you do today that was like new for you?
Almost everything. I never climbed a tree, and I never built a fort outside.
Cool. So you get to do 2 new things today. And how do you feel about yourself being able to do that? Yeah, you proud of yourself? Trying new things, stretching yourself?
Definitely.
Awesome.
So you can see this is so important that all kids are getting this. One of our really important projects has been teaming up with the Gulf of Maine Research Institute. And last summer we went to a training to learn how to do citizen science with our students. And we learned all about the hemlock woolly adelgid, which is, decimating hemlocks up and down the East Coast. But we trained our students on how to identify hemlocks, how to identify the woolly adelgid, and then went out to the Nantucket, the Great Works Regional Land Trust in North Berwick. And every student in our school has gotten to go out and collect data on what's happening in our local ecosystems, and then put that data into their website for scientists to use. And so they're part of that problem solving, which is really exciting. And also just getting to hike there and play games and appreciate that conservation area has been really fun for the students and super engaging. And we've gone in all seasons, all types of weather. I don't want to jinx myself, but Thursdays have been really good. Even tomorrow, there looks like a window of no rain, and we're heading back there as well. So it's been really exciting. We had parents come on all of our field trips off campus, and they were just so excited to see the learning that was happening on these trips and during Woodland and Wonder. We did some surveys. The grant, we have lots of surveys and feedbacks and data collection along with the grant. So, we're really seeing how the teachers are growing, how parents are interested in it for their students, and even just how the students are responding to the experiences. Another big component was spending money on professional development. We've been working with Ann Stiers, who's a consultant. We have 8 teachers in our Nature Connection cohort, and they've been working monthly with her to do workshops and watch her teach, have her watch them teach and get feedback, to develop units, to look at what we're already doing and how we can take it outside and connect it to the outdoors. And the teachers have been really committed to pushing themselves. It's not, some of them love it, and some of them it's something new for them, and they're really stretching and growing in this area as well. So it's been exciting. And Wendy's going to come up and talk a little bit more.
All right, thank you for having us. An important consideration when we were developing this project for us was the idea or concept of equity. And having the correct gear to access the outdoors comfortably for all students is essential. Whether it's because they don't actually own it or because they forgot it, having a gear closet removes barriers for kids and for teachers. It allows kids to access what they need without fear of stigma or penalty, and it also allows teachers to plan for outdoor learning without having to concern themselves with making sure that their kids have what they need. The Brown Center was just one of the community relationships partners that we really wanted to foster for our kids this year. We knew going into the school year that many of our kids would really need to access teaching around concepts related to problem solving and negotiation and compromise and just managing the communal experience of being part of a classroom. The Brown Center was one way that we chose to address that need. Every fourth grade class has experienced on 3 different occasions an opportunity to go outside with a Brown Center educator and engage in activities to support these areas. And at the end of the year, they will all actually have the opportunity to go out to UNH, to go to the Brown Center, and access their low ropes course. Now that will give them an opportunity to challenge themselves as an individual by engaging in challenge by choice activities, but will also allow them to benefit from the support of their team, of their classroom, to really group problem solve, which is a huge skill that we want to foster in our young people. So outdoor learning at GWS would not have been possible without our staff and our teachers. We are not asking teachers to just pluck up their math lesson and bring it outside. What we're really asking them to do is to analyze their teaching practices and consider how do we use the outdoors to enhance the learning of our young people. So basically, it's a reshaping of some of their instruction. And what I will tell you about the outdoors is I do believe in my heart that it is the natural differentiator for education. So those kids who just need a little bit of space to move, the outdoors provides it. If it's a kid that just really benefits from kinesthetic learning, the outdoors provides it. And there are kids at our school that their smarts are nature smarts, and they can shine outside where indoors it might not work as well. So you'll see, like, this is like a class, a fourth grade class engaging in sit spots. That is a math class. They're working on symmetry. They're using natural materials to make it evident that they demonstrate understanding of symmetry. We've done orienteering. You can see in this class there's a fourth grade math lesson. They're calculating distance using their body, and it's a word problem that they're working out. All the students are there. All the students are engaged. And I just think that's a powerful way for kids to learn. For many years, our reading garden has been a really special place for our kids. The librarian, Cindy Maloney, came to us and she said it's a really pretty place, but it has a lot of ornamental plants, not necessarily native main plants. So she partnered with 2 fifth grade classes. They went out, they identified native plants versus non-native plants, and in the fall they removed them. Their next step is to plant native ground cover in the spring. Next steps for us, I'm really excited. We have some great projects coming up. Our fruit orchard is like amazing. So what's gonna happen is this spring, we're working with Retrias. They're going to prepare the soil for the trees to come, and in the fall, we'll have classes go out there and plant our orchard. And if you just think about sustainability and you think about seniors coming back to Great Works when they're graduating, they can see like their impact that they're leaving behind. That's their legacy. We're also doing a meditation garden. There's going to be a main mural artist that will work in collaboration with our art teacher, Angela Cuddy, and art clubs after school to design and enhance this space, but it'll be a place where kids can go and work on growing their social emotional skills. The Hammock Grove, which is my favorite place, which I'm driving Mrs. Alice Sarah crazy with, but like, so if you can picture in your mind this space with all these hammocks and you see a whole class worth of kids holding on to their book and tromping up the hill and just like losing themselves in a hammock and the pages of a book, it's just powerful stuff. We are experiencing an issue with an invasive species that is affecting our ash trees. So that is changing what our play area is going to be. So we're looking at another outdoor structure for this space that like takes in the environment into consideration, but it'll also be able to hold an entire class. So that'll be another space that teachers will be able to access outdoors, but also that the kids will be able to access during recess. In conclusion, the outdoor committee is also organizing a community day on Saturday, June 3rd, and if you're not busy, just saying, the idea is that we want to foster a connection with our community to our school, and this is one way that we can do that, to make them invested in outdoor learning and to also allow them an opportunity to kind of grow their understanding about what outdoor education looks like at Great Works School. So we want to, in closing, we appreciate the opportunity to come talk with you today, and we appreciate everything that you do for our students, our teachers, and our communities. Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
Very
Great stuff.
inspiring. I would love to see, oh my gosh. So first of all, you two are going above and beyond, and Jerry, this is your leadership that you're cultivating within your building, and this is what I'd love to see. And if you two could go out to the other schools, especially the upper level, and give this presentation, I'm hoping that you inspire others to take that risk, take that extra effort to write for grants and to produce such amazing opportunities for our children. I mean, oh my gosh, I wish my kids were still at
I
your
know.
school. Oh my gosh, thank you. Please spread the word, and everyone, the principals that are here, please invite them to your buildings at a staff meeting, because I really want others to hear, like, this is what it's all about. Thank you.
Yep. I love this.
Yeah, that was
You
great.
know, this makes my heart, this is my, I love it. And I just think I love that you tie in equity in every class, and it's fantastic. You said outside is a natural differentiator for education, and I think that you've summed it and put it into action, and I just love it. Thank you guys so
Those
much.
hammocks remind me of the college campuses.
Yes.
At UNH, when you go down, there's hammocks all over in the spring. Yeah, this is cool. Very cool.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, folks, very
Yeah,
much.
thanks.
Next on our agenda is the voting on the school calendar for next year, the 2023-2024 school calendar. There are no changes from our last conversation. We are in the process of putting on parent-teacher conferences on the schedule, so that's something that we will do once the calendar is been adopted completely. So just as some highlights, that we would be starting school on the 30th for students of August, Staff would start the 28th of August. We would have October 6th would be a professional development day. November 7th, which is voting day, would be a day of no school. We would begin the winter break on Friday the 22nd. We would have school, and then we would have that time off. One of the big changes is, and I just really want to reach out to the QEA for bringing this up, because I think it's wonderful, that they really asked to have that professional development opportunity in the springtime. We had kind of was so front-loaded with the fall, and so we've been able to kind of coordinate with some other schools. And so March 8th will be a professional development day, and Heidi's doing some exciting things around kind of creating more of a seminar approach with a couple of different school districts to give teachers a bunch of different choices, pulling resources in from other communities. So it's really, really exciting. And then the last day of school looks like it is going to be the 7th of June, which is a half day.
Oh, okay.
So that's on our new business to vote on.
That would be on the new business
Great,
development.
okay.
So March 8th is no school for kids.
Say it one more time.
March 8th would be no school for kids.
That's correct. Yep. There is a little bit of a funky week in November, because the 7th is going to be a day, because that is the voting day, and I think there was talk that possibly in the future Elliott would be able to do their own voting, and so that would kind of take that off the agenda for us. But from school safety perspective, I think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But then 2 days later, that Friday is going to be off for the Veterans Day holiday. So that is a little bit of a productive week. Okay. Next, I just wanted to touch on kind of an idea that we've had floating around for quite some time. And we've talked about it a lot, and I really want to give Ms. Woods a lot of credit for this, because it kind of, for me, started to tie some things together. And so we've talked about communication with families, and what does that look like, and how do we do that on a regular basis. And so there's all these resources that are out there, and there's all kinds of different places on our website to be able to pull things from. And then in the span of a week, I had 4 or 5 different groups reach out to me saying, hey, look, could you send this flyer home? Could you send that flyer home? And that gets to be a little bit tricky because, you know, like, what's the school's role? And I think that was what Ms. Woods was referring to when we had this conversation over email, and then she shared with you this evening. And so what I'm excited about is that I was able to talk to one of our tech people, and they're going to create a parent webpage. And that's going to put all of these parent resources in one location on our website. And so it would be, you know, if you had, wait till 8, you know, that would be an example of something that we would have on that website. There's a gun safety website that, you know, is kind of put out by the school districts. Here's a resource for families. So, you know, there could be alcohol drug issues that you might be having. Here's some resources for that. So after I spoke to Ms. Woods over email last week, I reached out to the Choose to Be Healthy Coalition, which is Gina and Sally, who come and do some of the work with us. And they were excellent, and so we're working with them to be able to kind of pull all these resources together to create a parent resource. Once that's up and running, what I'll do is I will send an email out to families to say, look, this is what's happening. Here are some examples of some of the resources that are available on the webpage so that people now have a directed area where they can go to. Eventually, conferences would be a good place to be able to put on there. If you were looking to do a special education referral, here's the place where you can go if you have questions about that. If you have questions about gifted and talented, who do you talk to? So just trying to create that centralized hub of pulling all the information so families have an opportunity to be aware of this. And at the same time, from a school's perspective, it's hard because there are so many of these things that kind of come out over time. There's summer programming, there's vacation programming, there's all these different things. So what do you send out, what don't you send out? You know, for me, email is pretty sacred. That's an emergency communication device that we use. And if we overuse email from the district level, then it loses its value. But at the same time, you know, years ago, it used to be, you know, on Fridays, you know, Matthew and Connor would come home with their backpack and they'd have all the flyers from everything, and here you go, here's all the information for people. And so to be able to let parents know that that's out there. So I know we've talked about it a couple different times, but this is kind of a chance to pull it all together. So.
That's great.
Great.
Yep.
So you'll let us know when that's
my goal is
ready
to have
to
that up and rolling by the Monday when we get back from April vacation. My goal would be then at the beginning of that week to be able to put an email out and then, you know, share the resources. You know, we'll share the resource that we talked about this evening and had the presentation about. There's a couple others we can give for
That's great.
And it's going to be something that's going to evolve. And so if I were to speculate, you probably would like to see what that looks like for yourselves, and then you might have some feedback for us to be able to add some things in the future. So I think that we would probably do that in May as well.
Great.
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 Talk about that. So.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No, thank you.
No, that's good.
I just had Lisa
great
in my
stuff.
head because she has talked
Yeah,
about that
she's
so many times, you know what I mean? So like, I keep looking over there, you know, so.
She'll be excited to hear
yeah.
about this.
Yes, she will.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great.
Yeah.
She's probably hearing it right now.
Yes.
Yes.
Some sad news. My friend Elaine Robinson has put her letters of retirement in, so I'm happy for her that she will be retiring on April 30th. And so I just can't express how wonderful she's been, her etiquette on the phone, just to be a support for me, just a wonderful person, to greet people in the office, and just really has made a difference in our community. On a personal note, I'm going to miss her deeply. I look forward to our conversations about cats. But I'm excited for her at the same time, and so just wanted to recognize that Elaine will be retired.
So Elaine is always a smiling, greeting face
Yeah,
when
right.
you walk
Super
into the central
professional.
office,
Yeah.
and I will certainly miss that.
Yes.
Yeah. So these will be the last minutes. So we're gonna, the next meeting, we'll bring a person in to start training them on how to take minutes. And so this is going to be the last solo opportunity for Elaine. So she just got an A+ last when we voted a few minutes ago. So there's no pressure, Elaine. Don't worry about it.
Thank you for everything.
Yes.
What's the worst thing that's going to
And
happen?
good luck.
And I will say, Elaine's also been very helpful to say that if we struggle to find somebody to fill in, she would help us, but also help train the person when they.
Very cool.
Because there's a lot.
Thank you for
Elaine
that.
does more than just answer the phone. She does a lot of work with our homeschool people and be able to coordinate that with the state of Maine. Obviously, facilitating phone calls between the different buildings and parents as they have concerns and directing them in the right direction, kind of acting as that operating in a lot of ways. So there's a lot that goes into it. So.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you.
And then number 6, there is an action item here where Marshwood Youth Baseball would like to make a donation to Marshwood Middle School to improve the batting cage at the middle school. That's a batting cage that can be used by both baseball and softball, which is great. From our perspective, they're doing all the work, and they're also preventing work in the future. Right now, there's a gravel base in the batting cage, and so every year you have to go and kind of pick weeds a lot to be able to handle the grass. And so what they're talking about now is putting some stone dust down, putting some gravel down, and then eventually putting a turf surface over that. A piece of turf. No, we're not going to do like a full wood, but like a piece of turf you might buy it. Well,
Yes.
so that would, obviously reduce the maintenance for Mike at the middle school and create a better environment for the kids. So I would highly recommend that we approve that. Great partnership.
Did you say that that was going to be on tonight's agenda? Because I don't see it under new business. Did I just miss it?
Yeah, I have it on mine, but that doesn't necessarily.
See the calendar, the 4 first reads, and the Southborough Rec.
Yep.
You could just add it.
Yeah, we can add it in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll need to hand yours to someone to read the motion.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, good.
Fantastic. And I would turn it over to the students for their
Thank you.
report.
Awesome. Spring sports are off to a great start. Both boys and girls lacrosse had scrimmages against Dover, and baseball and softball had a scrimmage against Portsmouth last night. All teams played wonderful. For student government, Eva Therian had met with some administration to set some ground rules for the weight room, just to try to make it a more enjoyable environment for everyone. It was approved. The rules are now listed in the weight room, as well as they were all sent out to all the teachers and people who chaperone the weight room. So hopefully those will all fall in line. Everything will work out for that. Talk about some wellness activities to fill Hawkblock and advisory times have been mentioned for the springtime. This would include Foursquare, volleyball outside, just to get some motion. And also hoping to bring back the idea of winter carnival this spring. That wasn't able to happen because of AP crams. So we're hoping to fit it in after AP testing is done.
Great, thank you.
All right. For extracurriculars, I'm going to catch up from the last week of March. Quiz Bowl team participated in states 2 Saturdays ago with 2 teams. The Marshwood A team placed 4th out of 15, rounding off their season with a happy end. Both the Civil Rights team and the GSA celebrated March 31st, which is the Trans Day of Visibility. Civil Rights team sent an email to staff to outline its importance, as well as created a display in the lobby across from the library, which I believe you can still see. On that day, the GSA handed out Skittles and explained what the day was to students passing by. It went very well. I participated in that. The one-act play and action has come to a close after the crew's last performances at the main drama festival, state and regional competitions. Josie D'Angelo and Kendra Minster were commemorated for their abilities at the regional meet and named to the all-festival cast. At the state competition, 2 more of Marshwood's own were named to the all-festival cast as well. Congratulations to Liam Young and Kaylin Grogg. Frozen's open night was last Friday. This week there is the understudy show at 7 o'clock on Thursday, a show on Friday, and 2 on Saturday. On Sunday, the band performed at their last competition of the season and earned a silver medal. The color guard also performed and earned a silver medal too. And then this is a little shout out to the Great Works musical, which is next Thursday at 7 o'clock, and it is The Little Mermaid. I'm very, very proud of the 5th graders. I finally got to see Poor Unfortunate Souls today, and I screamed the entire time. The month update. March was all about diversity. We spent most of these weeks celebrating culture through music of different countries and little fun facts for each. The cafeteria also rolled out different foods across the globe. For example, miso soup from Japan. I'm not going to say these right, but jollof rice from Nigeria, Moroccan couscous, bao de doi from Brazil. To wrap up the advisory activities that month was a very special and interesting presentation done by Jermaine Moore. He spoke about the misconceptions surrounding diversity and outlined all the different identities that fall under the categories that create diversity. He spoke about embracing our differences and the ways in which we can do that. Empathy and power were 2 major points, and among all the classes, the presentation was very well received. April kicks off Career Readiness and Preparing for the Future Month, and one of the big activities occurred just today. The University of Maine Symphonic Band performed for the entire school. The conductor talked about all of the different music opportunities available at UMaine and mentioned how many other schools have similar programs. So that concludes our report.
Can I just say that, just hearing that, like, that's a big deal. Like, that has not happened in this school for a long time, where we would, an all-school assembly for those types of things. Like, that's a really, so we talk about building community and building culture, like, that's just one of those things that, you know, it's nice to see.
Yeah, it really is.
You know, so.
That's
anyway.
great.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. How was your lunch?
Oh, it was very nice. I did not win a scholarship, unfortunately, but it was great. Now I have a little plaque with my name on it, and they spelled my name right. So that was very nice.
One N.
Huh?
One N.
One N.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the report of the committees. Finance Facilities will next meet on the 26th of April. That's our next meeting in 3 weeks. Take note, our next meeting is in 3 weeks because of school vacation. Ed Policy met on the 22nd of March.
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, so we met, and as you'll see on tonight's agenda, we have 4 first readings, and we'll be voting on that first readings tonight, and we can go into discussion about each of those policies later on.
Great. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then lastly, Wellness SEL was scheduled to meet tonight, but we kind of stepped on that with our budget realignment activity. So I guess they'll meet next month, and we'll talk about that then. That brings us to new business. And the first order of business, if I may have a motion to do this, is the approval of the school calendar.
I move to approve the MSAD 35 school calendar for 2023-2024.
Second, Heather?
Heather, thank you. Any other questions or comments about that? Okay, all in favor? That is 5-0, thank you. And now we're into the first reads. May I have a motion, please, with regard to the first read of GBEBA?
I'll move to approve the first reading and discussion of policy GBEBA, staff conduct, ethics, and attire.
Second, Jen?
Jen, thank you.
May I say something, Joe?
Yes, please.
I just recently, this afternoon, got some great feedback from our QEA, and that I would ask that the board consider voting this policy down and allowing us to bring it back to the policy committee at the end of this month to be able to have that conversation about some changes that they have recommended.
Okay.
Okay, so like,
Yeah, all good things, all good.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
Some nice clarity, yeah, it was really good. So it was very, I think a very positive and collegial work to do together, but I would like to be able to honor that feedback if the board was so
Alright, sure.
allowed.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It makes
Absolutely.
complete sense.
Thank you.
In that case, all in favor, looks like none, and opposed is 5. So that fails on a 0 to 5 vote. Don't get to say that very often. Yeah, that's great. So that'll go back to policy.
Yes, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, excellent. Next up is GCFB, please.
I'll move to approve
Kate.
the first reading and discussion of policy GCFB, recruiting and hiring of administrative staff.
Second, Jen?
Jen, thank you. Okay. This looks like we're adding language that we've previously added to other policies around race traits and hairstyles.
Yes.
Yep. Pregnancy hadn't previously been in there, I guess. It looks like that's an add.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions or comments about this?
and so these are just like the recommendations, from the law office, like the highlighted.
From Maine School Management, who works with the law office to do that. So we work through Maine School Management.
I still don't understand why they put afro hairstyles. They should just do hairstyles, but whatever. I guess that's.
Point to Maine state law is why they
Yeah.
did that, yep.
So, I mean, maybe this is how it's supposed to read, but race includes traits associated with race, including hair texture. Is that?
This is the language that the
Seems
law.
like that's the language of the law.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
uses, yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor? That is 5-0, thank you. That moves us to GCFB-R.
Okay, go ahead.
I move to approve the first reading and discussion of policy GCFB-R, recruiting, oh wait, sorry, wrong one. I approved.
All right.
You were right.
You were
Am
right.
I?
You were doing great.
Recruiting and hiring of administrative staff procedures? Oh,
Procedures,
why-
yeah,
why-
this- the dash R is the
it's a
procedures.
procedure. Sorry, procedure. Sorry,
Yes.
okay, yes, I just thought I was reading the same one twice.
Yep, no, you did
So
fine.
similar.
Sorry about that.
I'll second Jen.
Jen, thank you.
And there was no
There's no
changes.
changes on that.
Okay, so the procedure is good as is. Comments or questions? All in favor? That's 5-0, thank you. Fourth one is KDB.
I move to approve the first reading and discussion of policy KDB, Public's Right to Know / Freedom of Access.
Second, Rebecca?
Thank you. So we're reducing the copying costs.
Well, yes.
That's good.
May I address this?
Please.
And so, under the Freedom of Information Act, there is kind of set legal guidelines as far as what we can charge for things. And so that it used to be 15 cents per copy. The state's lowered that now to 10 cents per copy. In addition, there's a fee that we can charge per hour after the first 2 hours of staff time. So basically what it says is that if you want a job and we would give an estimate to somebody to say, look, this is going to cost X dollars because it's going to take this amount of time, and if you want this information, please send us your check, and then we will send you the information once we do that. But the first 2 hours are free, but after that is the rate of $25 per hour, and that's per main statute.
That's great.
Yep.
Okay. Great.
I mean, we recently received one request that probably, without exaggeration, would have taken upwards of 200 to 300 hours to be able to put together. So this is what this policy helps. I don't think people realize sometimes when they ask for something, and it's just not necessarily that easy to manage.
Right.
So.
And
Costly.
when you tell them how much it costs, do they still want it?
Some people, yeah, some people, yeah.
Okay.
You know, and some of the stuff is just readily available on the website also.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So please, we'll just direct them to the right area to go. And so,
Yeah.
just sometimes you think it's a relatively small request, and you just don't understand the layers that they kind of, and then also just to be able to to correlate all that, particularly when you've had 3 or 4 different management systems. You've used Tyler, you've used paper and pencil, and so you go back 30 years. There's a lot of stuff to pull. So.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All in favor? That is 5-0, very good. This next is something we do, I think, every year with regard to the Southborough Recreation Summer Camp. Can I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the request from South Berwick Recreation Summer Camp Program for the summer of 2023 bus transportation from June 28th, 2023 to August 2nd, 2023.
I'll second that, Rebecca.
Rebecca, thank you. John, anything to add, or?
It's good to be back doing it again.
Yes, it sure is.
That's the
It
best
sure
thing.
is, yeah.
Kids having opportunities over the summertime is awesome, and we're glad to be able to be partners with our local community groups to be able to do that.
Very good.
And it also helps us because our drivers get to drive during the summertime to make it a more year-round type of business.
There it is.
There you go.
Comments
Win-win.
or questions? All in favor? So that's, I think I see
Oh, sorry.
5, yeah, okay.
Sorry.
5-0,
I'm
thank you.
here.
Good, and there's a last, you have it.
Yes, I have it
Excellent,
here.
please, go.
I move to approve the donation by Marshwood Youth Baseball of materials and labor to renovate the batting cages at Marshwood Middle School.
Second.
Rebecca and Heather, great. So you've already spoken about that. Sounds like a good deal.
The only catch is that we have to coordinate the timing of that.
Yeah.
Just because the ground is so saturated back there, and so if people drive trucks out there, it's going to create some serious issues. So we'll probably be more likely after April vacation that we can do this work.
Okay, but they want to get it done for this season.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
good.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
good. Okay. Comments or questions? All in favor? That's 5-0. Great. Thank you. That concludes our new business and brings us to our building administrator's check-in. And since the lower grades folks have all come to review their budgets, they're going to
Great. Today was one of those days, just being in the office, realizing just so much appreciation for two groups of people, our administrative assistants and our special ed techs. Every morning, Mrs. Wiegert and Mrs. Pratt we start our day at 6 o'clock texting about guest teachers and where everybody is, and just watching them today. Mrs. Wiegert doing like 5 different duties, and Beth helping somebody do some writing homework they didn't want to do, and just so grateful for them. They all do think Mrs. Pratt's the principal, but that's okay. And then just so many examples today of our special ed techs. I had somebody brought in a bunny in a bag that was making the kids all so happy, and I have a little guy that had having some hard times sometimes, and just he was sitting next to his ed tech, and his ed tech mentioned that she had a headache, and he jumped up and just hugged her and kissed her and went back to his work. I'm like, that's just really what it's all about. So just so grateful for those groups of people.
Thank you.
Annabelle talked about the UMO band, and so we couldn't let them, they had to get on the turnpike, so they had to come into the Great Work School too. We wouldn't let them just come up the road. And there were 2 Marshwood kids. One of the, Madison Terrace walked in, and I'm like, I know that kid. And Ryan Long, and Ryan did a solo. This group was unbelievable. And so it was an hour concert, but so we're so impressed. The other thing, talk about impressive, we've gone away from the milk cartons at school. So Chad Walls talked about, they had these milk machines that they said, does anybody want to try them? So before any other school could say they wanted it, Great Works, we said, we'll try it. And so we've had it in place for 2 days. The kids have done great, and we really talked to the kids about just the idea of we won't be throwing away 1,500 cartons of milk, the milk containers. And so what we do is the kids get their lunch, they set their trays down, have full lunch, and then we just have glasses, and the kids come up, they just like in college, they pour their milk, and then they just go back and sit down. So they still have to use the milk cartons for breakfast, but for lunch, and we introduced the mop to them. So we brought out the mop. I had a couple of kids demonstrate. We actually poured a little milk and said, okay, who knows how to mop this? And so, because there will be accidents, but we're not going to let that stop us, because it's the right thing to do.
And you're not going to cry over spilled milk.
Yeah, I was just going to say it.
And, tomorrow, between 11 and 12, I guess, or whatever our lunches are, we're going to be doing s'mores on the playground. So if you see a little bit of campfire smoke and things like that, we've got s'mores, so stop by.
Nice.
Okay. 4 things. Students in grades 1 through 3 participated in the Kids Heart Challenge, which is part of the American Heart Association fundraising activity. Our kids had a blast. They did a great job. I want to recognize Hannah Rosno, who's the phys ed teacher, Jen Chamberlain, who's the art teacher, and Marissa Armitage, music teacher, and Meredith Seggett, who's the librarian, all of which facilitated the activities in the gym. The kids raised $4,300.
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
A lot of money. A lot of money raised by Elliott Elementary School for the American Heart Association. RACE, which is the annual fundraiser for our PEEPs, Elliott's equivalent of PTO. They will kick off RACE on April 7th. We would encourage community participation in that, with the idea, keeping in mind some of those funds may end up improving the playground at Elliott Elementary School. So this is a big year for RACE. The Unified Art Show at Elliott, which will include art, music, physical education, and library, is scheduled for April 12th at 4 o'clock. It'll go for a couple of hours. So we're excited about that. And then the Scholastic Book Fair will be hosted by Elliott April 10th through the 13th. So a lot happening. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts from anybody on the board? In that case, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I'll second, Kate.
Thank you. All in favor? That is also 5-0, and we